Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. This is a hearing about arms control, and when we talk about arms control, we typically think of weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons, things like that. But today, threats can come from a lot of places, and I want to follow up on Senator McCormick. High-tech chips are typically reviewed for export control authorizations by the Commerce Department. Yesterday, the President made an announcement that surprised a number of us about the transfer of Nvidia H200 chips to China. The details on this are being worked out by the Commerce Department. These chips have a significant national security implication in the way that Senator McCormick mentioned. He is a co-sponsor of a bill that was filed last week by Senators Ricketts and Coons called the Safe Chips Act that would make it very difficult for the United States to transfer chips of this kind. The chips in that legislation are not named by a brand name, but the qualities of those chips that would be subject to significant national security review before transfer laid out in that. I support this legislation that was filed last week. I'm seeking to be added as a co-sponsor. The question that I want to ask each of you is, should the State Department, DOD, and other national security agencies have a greater say in decisions like this, the transfer of high-end chips that could reduce our edge over China, including in very sophisticated national security technology? Why should commerce be taking the lead without the involvement of national security agencies, and should we seek to change that?
Perhaps I'll start, Senator Kaine, and thank you for the question. I come at this having been the Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security with responsibility for political military affairs, the Political Military Affairs Bureau being under my aegis. And we did make critical decisions that were related to arms transfers and sales, all the licensing that was done related to qualitative military edge, for example, in the case of Israel. So I can see a rationale for the State Department as well as the Defense Department being involved in such decision-making when we are concerned about such chips affording a country like China a military edge. So I do see a rationale for that. I will say, sir, that I'm not familiar with the act and the draft legislation that you've discussed, but that is my initial response.
And Mr. Billingsley, but Senator Ricketts, I'm asking questions about your Safe Chips Act that you filed with Senator Coons, and that I would like to be added as a co-sponsor to when you're ready to add co-sponsors. But again, to you, Mr. Billingsley, shouldn't the transfer of technology like this that has such significant national security implications be reviewed by national security agencies and not simply by the Commerce Department?
So, Senator, I'm familiar with the H200 chip, and I'm not qualified to speak on that particular matter. I'm looking at Senator Shaheen's senior staffer behind her. He and I worked together for years when he was on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and I was here in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on this matter of proper jurisdiction for licensing decisions, either on the munitions list via the Department of State or over under the Export Administration Act with the Department of Commerce. And we had in those days often widely differing views with the Clinton administration at the time, also differing views between committees and members of Congress over proper jurisdiction over certain exports. That's a long way of saying, though, that if you believe that a particular technology has direct military applications of significance, then probably the Department of State, in my view, would need to be involved in that process, as well as the Department of Defense.
Well, and I think Senator McCormick laid it out well. AI capacity ties in with nuclear command and control, so it's directly connected to important military technology and U.S. military advantage. One of the things about the report of the transfer of these Nvidia chips that's complicated is the U.S. has now taken an ownership interest in Nvidia. The U.S. has said that these particular transfers to China will get a 25% stake in the revenue. So we have a revenue upside to transfer a technology to China, the transfer of which could likely degrade our national security edge over China. There's also been reporting that the CEO of Nvidia made a large contribution to the construction of the ballroom that's currently being built on the White House. Is this transfer being done out of a financial interest, to undercut America's national security posture. I think this is something that we really have to analyze. And the fact that this announcement came sort of out of the blue yesterday, after months, obviously, of lobbying by Nvidia, I think just indicates the wisdom of the Ricketts-Coons legislation and the need for there to be a review of this kind. And the last thing I'll say, Mr. Chair, is we ran into kind of a similar issue during COVID. We had defined national security items in a fairly narrow way, and then suddenly we found that advanced pharmaceutical ingredients or even masks, gloves, and gowns could be a national security item when you really need them. I think advanced chips are definitely a national security item. They're not a nuclear weapon, but they have a huge impact on tomorrow's defense needs of the United States and others, and we may need to broaden the aperture in terms of how we review transfer of some of these technologies. Thank you.
It isn't just nuclear weapons either, virtually, when it comes to the chips. I mean, it's everything. So with that, Senator Ricketts, you're up.